Seoul, South Korea. A side street 3 blocks south of the Grand Hyatt. 5:47 a.m. Declan Calloway had been running networks in Asia for 11 years. He had learned in that time that there were 2 kinds of information, the kind you could put in a report, and the kind that required you to take a walk first. He took the walk. 3 blocks south of his hotel, past a flower market that was just opening, past a woman arranging white chrysanthemums in a bucket of water, past a coffee cart with a line of office workers who did not look up. Declan found a corner that faced a wall and raised the phone to his ear. His contact in Seoul had been thorough. The Yoon syndicate had been running an active search for 14 days. They had identified 11 candidate hotels. They had retrieved 1 response, a note card returned with flowers, and they had a name. The name was Sienna Delacroix. Declan was quiet for a moment. Then he asked, "Does Yoon Jae-Won know she's inside Hanryeo, sir?" His contact said, "As of yesterday evening." Yes. Declan thanked him. He ended the call. He stood at the corner for a while longer. The woman with the chrysanthemums was still arranging them. The office workers had their coffee. The city was waking up around him, entirely indifferent to the specific weight of what he was now holding. He had known Seamus Calloway for 31 years. In that time, he had reported to him accurately, completely, and without editorializing. This was not merely professionalism. It was a specific form of loyalty, the kind that assumed the person you served was capable of handling the truth and deserved to receive it unfiltered. He sat with his notebook for a long time. The left column was what he knew. The right column was what it meant. What he knew, Yoon Jae-Won's syndicate had been searching for Sienna since the night of the incident. They had found her name through the note card she had sent back with the flowers. They now knew she was inside Hanryeo Group. Jae-Won had instructed Sung-hyun to investigate who had hired her. What it meant, the Yoon syndicate was aware that a woman connected, however distantly, to the Calloway network had intervened at the Grand Hyatt and was now embedded in an organization they were actively investigating for attempted assassination. What Declan had not yet written in the right column, whether Jae-Won's interest in Sienna was threat assessment or something else. He had enough experience with men and the things they did not say to have a read on this. He was not certain his read was wrong. He closed the notebook. He picked up the phone and called Seamus. He reported what was in the left column. He said nothing about the right. County Clare, Ireland. The western coast, the Atlantic going dark. Seamus Calloway had been in County Clare for 22 years. He had come at 53 after a career that had operated in the spaces between legal and something else. And he had decided, not with drama, but with the quiet finality of a man who had looked at everything he had built and calculated exactly what it would cost to keep. That the western coast of Ireland was where he would spend the rest of his life. He had poured a whiskey. He had watched the Atlantic for a while. Then he had gone inside and called the 6 men whose loyalty he had carried for 30 years and told them one by one exactly what was changing and what was not. That had been 22 years ago. The Atlantic was still there. So was he. He listened to Declan's report without interrupting. When Declan finished, Seamus was quiet for a moment, the way of a man who is not deciding what to think. He had already thought it, but deciding what to say. He said, "The Yoon syndicate is looking for her." Declan said, "Yes." He said, "And they know she is inside Hanryeo." Declan said, "As of yesterday." Seamus looked at the window. The light was going. The Atlantic was doing what it always did, moving, gray and enormous, entirely unconcerned with the specific calculations of men. He said, "She doesn't know." Declan said, "No." He said, "And she cannot know yet." He poured another whiskey after the call. He did not drink it immediately. He sat with it, the way you sit with something you are not yet ready to put down. In 31 years, Declan had never given him a report that felt incomplete. This one did. Seamus noted it. He said nothing. He drank the whiskey. He watched the sea go dark. I am going to pause here for just a second, because we have just spent time with two men in two different cities, both holding information about the same woman. Declan knows, Seamus knows, and neither of them can tell her yet. And Sienna? She is getting dressed for a gallery opening. She has no idea. If you are not subscribed to Dark Magnolia Stories, now is the time. Because what happens next? The gallery, the 9 words, and a man who says something he absolutely did not plan to say. You do not want to experience that alone without someone to talk to in the comments. Subscribe. I'll be right here. The Hanryeo gallery opening had been on Sienna's calendar since her second day in Seoul. It was not optional. The chairman had mentioned it as an opportunity to observe the organization in a social context, which meant it was a request with the form of an invitation. She arrived at 7:15. She identified the 3 highest-ranking people in the room within 4 minutes. She positioned herself near the largest canvas, where the sightlines were good, and the traffic patterns would bring most of the room to her, rather than requiring her to navigate to them. She had been there for 40 minutes when he walked in. She knew the moment he entered. She did not look immediately. She let 2 full seconds pass, enough to compose the quality of attention she would bring to looking. And then she looked. He was already looking at her. He moved through the room the way water moves around objects, not pushing, not acknowledging the navigation, simply arriving at the other side of it. It took him 3 minutes to reach the canvas where she was standing. He did not look at her directly. He looked at the painting. She looked at the painting. He said, still looking at the painting, "Your assessment was correct." She said, "It usually is." He said, "I know." 9 words. 3 of his, 6 of hers, if you counted the ones that weren't technically words but functioned as them. 4 of his and 5 of hers, if you counted differently. They would each count differently. He moved away from the canvas 2 minutes later. Unhurried, without ceremony, back into the room's gravitational pull. She watched him go for exactly the amount of time that could be attributed to ordinary gallery movement. Then she turned back to the painting. She looked at it for a long time. She was not seeing it. Your assessment was correct. It usually is. I know. She had been counting since she stepped outside. 3 exchanges, 9 words by one count, 8 by another, depending on whether you treated "I know" as a response or a statement. She had been a linguist's daughter long enough to know that the distinction mattered. He had said, "Your assessment was correct." He had read the note she'd sent. He had acted on it, or he had intended to act on it, or he was telling her he had received it as more than a professional courtesy. She had not yet determined which. He had said, "I know," after she had said it usually is. That was the one she kept returning to. "I know" was not "I believe you" or "I'll take your word for it." "I know" was the statement of someone who had verified independently and arrived at the same conclusion. It was the statement of someone who had looked into her. She should have found that alarming. She filed it under things she would think about later, and opened her briefing notes for the following morning. She did not write the 9 words in her diagnostic notes. She did not write them in any notes. Sung-hyun did not ask about the gallery. Yo, wei. He had been at the event, not inside, but present, which was where he always was. He had seen what there was to see. He understood that certain things were not discussed in cars, and that Jae-Won would speak when he was ready to speak, and not before. Jae-Won said after a long time she was at the Hanryeo event. Sung-hyun said yes. Jae-Won said, "Find out who hired her. The full engagement. Who made the contact? Who brought her name to the table?" What the original brief was before Hanryeo gave her the official one. Sung-hyun said, "I'll have it by morning." Jae-Won said, "Good." He did not tell Sung-hyun about the 9 words. He thought about them in the order they had happened. Then he thought about them in a different order. "Your assessment was correct. It usually is." "I know." He had intended to say, "Thank you for the assessment," a professional acknowledgement. A closing of the loop the note had opened. What he had said instead was, "I know." He was aware that this was not the same thing. He looked at the city. He said nothing further. Some calls you take outside. Declan had taken his walk and made his call and reported what was in the left column. Seamus had listened to the report and known it was incomplete and said nothing yet, because there were things that required sitting with before they required action. Sienna did not know she was being searched for. She did not know that the man she had spoken 9 words to in a Seoul gallery was the same man whose life she had cut a thread to save 3 weeks ago. She did not know that the organization she was diagnosing was connected to the attempt on his life. She knew that he had said, "I know." She knew she had not written it down. She knew why. Yoon Jae-Won had her name, her employer, her history with a family whose reach he was beginning to understand. He had 9 words. He had a note pinned above his desk that he had read 4 times. He had a question about who had hired her that Sung-hyun would answer by morning. He also had the specific awareness of a man who had looked at someone across a room and understood without deciding to understand it that the accounting between them was not finished. In County Clare, Seamus Calloway put down his whiskey glass and went to bed. He did not sleep immediately. He was thinking about the thing Declan had not said. Thank you for watching Whiskey and War on Dark Magnolia Stories. County Clare, I need you to sit with that for a second, because we just met Seamus Calloway, a man at his window on the edge of the Atlantic. Who knows his best operative just handed him an incomplete report and said nothing. And Sienna counted 9 words in a taxi and didn't write a single one of them down, which means the woman who writes everything down is keeping a secret from her own notebook. Episode 5 is called The Leadership Autopsy. Sienna goes to the board. Oh Byung-jun will be across the table from her, and Jae-Won's team will have an answer by morning. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Leave a comment. I want to know. When Jae-Won said, I, no, instead of thank you, did you catch it? Because he did, and so did she.